Everyone carries a shadow. It follows us everywhere, not behind our footsteps, but beneath our skin. It is the unseen stranger in the room when you speak, the silent presence that colors your choices, the echo in your mind whispering things you wish you didn't hear. Carl Jung once warned, the less the shadow is embodied in conscious life, the blacker and denser it becomes. And that is the danger. What remains unacknowledged does not disappear. It festers. It leaks out in our anger, our envy, our cruelty, in words we blur out when we're tired, or in the judgment we pass on others without realizing we are condemning ourselves. This is the personal shadow, the parts of ourselves we repress, deny, or pretend don't exist. And when entire groups, nations, and cultures do the same, these hidden forces merge into something far larger, far darker, the collective shadow. Today, we're diving deep into Jung's most haunting idea. Why the shadow matters. How it sabotages us when ignored. And how, if we dare to face it, it can become not only our greatest teacher, but the key to psychological wholeness. So ask yourself, what part of you do you most fear to see? That is where we must begin. Jung described the personal shadow as the thing a person has no wish to be. It is the hidden self, the traits, desires, impulses, and memories that your ego cannot accept. Think of it as the dark basement of the psyche. Everything you've disowned, everything you've denied, everything you were told was bad or unacceptable gets thrown down there. Anger, envy, selfishness. Even qualities that might one day serve you, like assertiveness, passion, or independence, if they were shamed early in life, end up buried in the dark. Most people like to believe their shadow doesn't exist. They say, I'm not angry. I'm not jealous. I'm not cruel. But that denial is exactly what gives the shadow its power. Because what is rejected inwardly always returns outwardly. It bursts out in moments of rage we didn't mean. It slips into sarcasm and hostility disguised as jokes. It poisons relationships when we project onto others what we can't admit in ourselves. Imagine the person who prides themselves on being endlessly kind, always agreeable, never upset. Their shadow may be boiling with resentment. One day, it erupts in ways that shock even them. Or think of the person who avoids conflict at all costs. In their shadow lies the strength to confront, to set boundaries, to say no, qualities they desperately need, but fear to embrace. The shadow is not only a container for our badness. It is also the prison of our unlived life. The confidence we suppressed. The creativity we were told was foolish. The instincts that could have guided us. All of it sits there, waiting. But here's the danger, the less we recognize it, the more it runs us from behind the scenes. We become puppets of what we refuse to face. Our moods swing without explanation. We lash out, withdraw, sabotage ourselves, and all the while, we say, I don't know why I did that. The truth is simple, but hard to accept. If you do not own your shadow owns you. How do we recognize the shadow when it hides so well? The answer, it often reveals itself in moments when we are least in control. You see it in the sudden flash of anger that surprises you. In the sarcastic remark you regret the moment it leaves your lips. In the envy you feel when someone else succeeds. In the irrational dislike of a person who has done nothing wrong. These are not random moods. They are messages. Each one is a glimpse of your shadow trying to speak. Jung often noted that dreams are another stage where the shadow plays its role. There, it frequently appears as a figure of the same sex as the dreamer, a rival, a critic, a menacing presence. This figure embodies the qualities you refuse to acknowledge, your inner judge exposing your blind spots. You wake unsettled, not because the dream was meaningless, but because it was brutally honest. Yet the shadow is not only destructive. Within it lie positive potentials you have denied. Jung wrote that it can display normal instincts, appropriate reactions, realistic insights, and creative impulses. Take assertiveness as an example. Many people grow up believing that standing up for themselves is rude or selfish, so they repress it. But what happens? They become passive, unable to ask for what they need, often stuck in jobs or relationships where their voice is never heard. Meanwhile, the positive side of assertiveness, confidence, honesty, leadership, remains locked in the shadow, inaccessible until they are willing to face it. Marie-Louise von Franz, Jung's close collaborator, compared the shadow to a difficult companion. Sometimes you must resist it. Sometimes you must give in. Sometimes you must offer it love. But the worst mistake is to ignore it. Because the ignored shadow does not vanish, it festers. Think of the shadow as a mirror. When you feel an outsized emotional reaction, jealousy, irritation, hatred, ask yourself, what part of me is being reflected back that I cannot bear to see? The more honest your answer, the less power the shadow has over you. To face the shadow is not a one-time revelation. It is a lifelong negotiation, slow, painful, and endlessly humbling. Jung compared it to the labors of Hercules, a heroic task where each victory reveals yet another challenge waiting in the dark. This process is known as shadow work, and it begins with a radical kind of honesty. Outwardly, you observe yourself. You notice when you are triggered, when you feel excessive anger, envy, or shame. Instead of denying it or blaming someone else, you pause and ask, what does this reaction say about me? Inwardly, you listen to your dreams. You pay attention to the figures, the stories, the emotions that appear at night. They are not random, they are symbolic criticisms, messages from your unconscious. Your inner judge is speaking. At first, this work feels brutal. You see things you do not want to see, your pettiness, your vanity, your need for control. It can feel like a dismantling of the self you've carefully constructed. But Jung insisted that without this confrontation, no real growth is possible. There is no light without shadow and no psychic wholeness without imperfection. The goal is not to destroy the shadow, nor is it to fix yourself into a state of moral perfection. That is an impossible fantasy. The real goal is integration, allowing the ego to accept its hidden counterpart, so that the whole personality becomes more balanced, more authentic, more alive. Integration often begins with small acts, setting a boundary you've always avoided, admitting to jealousy instead of pretending you're above it, channeling your aggression into strength rather than suppression. Each time, you reclaim a piece of yourself from the dark. And here lies the paradox. The very qualities we fear most often hold the key to our power. Anger can become passion. Envy can become inspiration. Fear can become wisdom. But only if we dare to bring them into the light. Shadow work is not about fighting darkness. It is about carrying a lantern into it, and discovering that much of what we feared was simply unlived potential. If the personal shadow is the darkness we carry as individuals, the collective shadow is the darkness carried by entire groups, cultures, and societies. Jung was clear, just as the individual represses and denies, so does humanity as a whole. The collective shadow emerges wherever we, as a society, refuse to face uncomfortable truths. It hides in history books that minimize atrocities. It lives in cultural prejudices that we justify as tradition. It takes form in wars, genocides, systemic oppression, environmental destruction. And just like the personal shadow, the collective shadow grows stronger when ignored. Denial makes it fester. Projection turns it violent. It erupts when nations dehumanize others, when leaders project their own weaknesses onto the enemy, when whole populations surrender to mass psychosis, convinced they are serving progress while blindly enacting destruction. Jung pointed to Nazi Germany as a terrifying example. Ordinary people, swept into a frenzy of ideology and projection, committed horrors far beyond what they could have imagined as individuals. The personal shadow became the bridge into the collective shadow, one man's repressed rage feeding into another's, until millions were engulfed. But the collective shadow is not only in the past. It is here, now, in our consumerism, in the exploitation of nature, in political polarizations, in the ways we divide us in them. Each time a society silences part of its truth, be it poverty, inequality, or historical wounds, the shadow waits, until it breaks through in destructive ways. And yet, Jung did not suggest despair. He insisted that facing the collective shadow begins with the individual. If you do not reconcile with your own hidden cruelty, you risk unconsciously supporting cruelty in the world. If you cannot admit your envy, you may project it onto entire groups and call it justice. Responsibility is the key. Personal honesty becomes the antidote to collective blindness. Jung believed that when individuals integrate their own shadows, they free not only themselves but also lighten the burden society carries. To face the collective shadow is to resist denial, to insist on truth-telling, to carry memory forward even when it hurts. It is to say, yes, this happened. Yes, we are capable of this. And yes, we can choose differently. Because only when darkness is owned can light be possible, not for the individual alone, but for humanity as a whole. The shadow is not an enemy to be destroyed. It is a mirror, a teacher, a necessary counterpart to the light. Jung reminded us, there is no light without shadow, and no psychic wholeness without imperfection. To ignore the shadow, personal or collective, is to let it rule us from the dark. To confront it is to reclaim our power. This is the lifelong task of individuation, to integrate, not to perfect, to become whole, not flawless. Your anger, your envy, your hidden impulses, they are not proof that you are broken. They are invitations to awareness. By owning them, you stop projecting them onto others. By listening, you discover they often hide strength, courage, creativity, authenticity. And on a larger scale, when enough individuals take responsibility for their own shadows, societies too can begin to heal their collective wounds. Wars, oppression, injustice, these are not random events. They are eruptions of denied darkness. If we can face our own shadows, we can help prevent the collective shadow from consuming humanity again and again. So here's the challenge: the next time you feel triggered, instead of projecting blame outward, pause. Ask yourself, what part of me does this reflect? What shadow is asking to be seen? This is not an easy path. It is the psychological equivalent of Hercules' labors. But it is also the only path that leads to freedom. Because shadow work is not about becoming someone new. It is about remembering who you really are, both the light and the dark, and finding wholeness in the union of both. If this video sparked reflection in you, let us know in the comments, what shadow are you beginning to recognize in yourself? And if you want to keep exploring Jung's ideas on the unconscious, individuation, and the psychology of the shadow, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Together, we can bring more light into the darkness, one shadow at a time.